In our headlines on this Thursday afternoon, April 25th, here in South Korea. Professors of medicine are stepping down as a month has passed since their tendering of resignations in support of junior doctors protesting government plans to raise medical school admissions quota. Meanwhile, South Korea's economy is expected to have expanded 1.3% on quarter during the first 3 months of this year, according to early calculations by the Bank of Korea. And over in the US, President Joe Biden seals a deal that pledges a military aid package worth $95 billion in strong support of Ukraine, Taiwan and Israel. As earlier announced, professors of medicine say their resignations tendered a month ago take effect now. Government officials, for their part, are pushing ahead with their broader healthcare reform agenda. Our Choi Soo-young has the latest.
Medical professors from across the country will leave their positions starting Thursday. According to an emergency committee of medical professors nationwide, professors from nearly 20 med schools in South Korea announced that they will depart from their hospitals as planned, with some leaving on April 25th, regardless of government's approval. It has been 1 month since the professors handed in their resignations. The Medical School of Seoul National University, one of the so-called Big Five general teaching hospitals in the country, said resignations will be carried out based on individual choice, and 4 leaders of its school's emergency council have confirmed they will definitely be leaving from the hospital on May 1st. Yonsei University said that the professors will voluntarily halt outpatient services and surgeries for 1 day on April 30th and will discuss further actions later. And the Emergency Council of Ulsan University medical professors also announced that the university medical professors' resignations will begin on Thursday, and those who are unable to resign immediately will halt medical services for 1 day per week from May 3rd. But emergency and critical care services are not expected to be affected. Meanwhile, the Presidential Special Committee on Medical Reform is also holding its first meeting on Thursday morning. This is the government-proposed social consultation to address the healthcare reforms. The meeting will focus on reducing regional medical disparities, revising medical laws, supporting fees per hospital, and increasing medical personnel. It was intended to have around 26 members, including health ministry officials, doctors' groups, nurses, pharmacists, and patients. However, the Korean Medical Association, the largest doctors' group, and the Korean Intern Residents Association have declared that they won't participate. Also, it is reported that discussions on the current medical dispute regarding the government's plan to expand the medical school enrollment quota by 2,000 from next year will be excluded. The government encourages these medical groups to participate, but they aren't backing down from their demand that the government completely withdraws its medical school expansion plan. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
First quarter findings appear to prove the Korean economy is standing on relatively solid ground. Early data by Seoul Central Bank shows an economic expansion of more than 1% on quarter. Our An Sang-jin reports.
The pace of South Korea's economic growth has been picking up. Data from the Bank of Korea on Thursday showed that in the first quarter of 2024, the country's GDP, an indicator of its total output of goods and services, increased by 1.3% compared to the previous quarter. This is the highest on-quarter increase since the fourth quarter of 2021, when GDP grew by 1.4%. It is also a more than 3% growth compared to the same quarter in 2023. Increased construction investment and a recovery in exports contributed to the growth. Civil engineering and building construction showed a strong performance, while exports of IT products such as phones propelled the increase. An official at the central bank explained the reasons behind the growth.
On top of improved consumer sentiment, the release of new smartphone models boosted private spending. However, growth in the construction sector may be temporary, coming from a base effect of low investment last quarter and more construction being wrapped up with the nicer weather. project financing risks still remain, which may bring down the growth.
Both consumer and government spending grew by nearly 1% as expenditure on goods and services such as restaurants and accommodation rose. On the production front, manufacturing went up by 1.2%, with an increase in chemical products and transportation equipment, while wholesale and retail services also saw production increase. The central bank official suggests that external factors could lower economic growth.
With increased geopolitical risks in the Middle East as well as concerns over the exchange rate and oil prices, the final projections for economic growth may be slightly reduced.
As data released on Thursday is the preliminary quarterly estimates, the final figures on the upcoming national accounts may be altered. Han Song-jin, Arirang News.
And Deputy Prime Minister Choi Sang-mok says the government will seek ways to better respond to potential changes in global supply chains given global uncertainties, including the situation in the Middle East. The remarks to this end were shared during an economic ministerial meeting on this Thursday in Seoul, where he also acknowledged Korea's latest economic growth. That being said, Minister Choi pointed to the recent implementation of an accord between Korea and its Indo-Pacific partners on supply chain stability as one strategy to tackle any possible disruption. And regarding first quarter findings in the corporate arena, SK hynix has logged an operating profit amid greater demand for AI chips. Our Shin Se-byuk has more.
South Korean chipmaker SK hynix said on Thursday that it shifted into black in the first quarter of this year, thanks to growing global demand for premium memory chip products. The world's second largest memory chip maker posted an operating profit of 2.8 trillion won, or a little over $2 billion for the period from January to March. It is the second highest quarterly operating profit for the company, following a peak reported in the first quarter of 2018. It also represents a significant turnaround from the operating loss of $2.47 billion reported during the same period last year. SK hynix credits its success to robust sales of its premium products for artificial intelligence, including high-bandwidth memory, as well as a profitable shift in its previously lagging NAND sector. The earnings exceeded market expectations, coming in nearly 40% higher than the market forecast of $1.4 billion estimated by Yonhap Infomax. As for net profit, it came to nearly $1.38 billion, a turnaround from a $1.87 billion loss recorded a year earlier. Sales soared 144.3% on year to $9 billion, marking a record first quarter high. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
In other news, LG Electronics is standing above the competition in the U.S. for washing machines. Consumer Reports has awarded LG products first, second and third places in all main categories for top loading, front loading and agitator washes. It claimed LG washing machines continue to show excellent washing performance, water use efficiency and energy efficiency. Consumer Reports evaluates products sold in the U.S. based on consumer surveys. In the U.S., a bill that seeks to support Ukraine, Taiwan and Israel with crucial military aid has been set in stone by U.S. President Joe Biden, as he asserts security in these regions has broader implications. Our Lee Sing-jae covers his remarks.
$95 billion. That's the amount of aid the U.S. is now providing in emergency foreign aid after approval from U.S. President Joe Biden. Of the $95 billion, $61 billion will go to Ukraine. After signing the bill, Biden said while the bill's path to his desk was difficult, but in the end, it did what America always does, rising to the moment to get things done. Biden also emphasized that the aid to Ukraine is not only for the security of Ukraine, but also for Europe and the U.S.
You know, this package is literally an investment, not only in Ukraine's security, but in Europe's security, in our own security.
The signing of the bill also allows for the U.S. to begin shipping equipment to Ukraine, including for air defense tech, artillery for rocket systems, as well as armored vehicles. However, according to ABC News, the United States already provided Ukraine with long-range ATACMS missiles last month, following orders from Biden. The missiles have already been used by Ukraine in their fight against Russia, including in Crimea last week and again in the port city of Berdyansk this week. ATACMS missiles can generally reach distances between 70 to 300 kilometers, enough to hit Russian territory. Biden's signing of the bill comes after the Democrat-majority Senate approved a package that also includes $15 billion in military aid for Israel, $9 billion in humanitarian aid for Gaza and other war-torn regions, and $8 billion in security assistance to deter China's aggression in the Indo-Pacific. The bill was first requested by the Biden administration last fall, but was met with Republican-led opposition in the House before a sudden reversal by House Speaker Mike Johnson. 이승재, Arirang News.
The Palestinian militant group Hamas has shared a new video of an Israeli-American hostage in a move that Israel has steadily denounced as psychological warfare. Our Choi Min-jung has details.
Hamas has released a new video showing an Israeli-American hostage. The person in captivity identified himself as 23-year-old Hirsch Goldberg Polin. He was kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival during Hamas's attack on October 7th. In the video, the hostage says that he has been in captivity for 200 days, suggesting that the video was filmed on the 200th day of the war this week. However, the exact date of filming is yet to be verified. In the video, the hostage criticizes Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the government for failing to save the remaining hostages, as other Israeli hostages have done in Hamas hostage videos. He also says that Israel's airstrikes killed 70 captives in the Gaza Strip. After watching the video, the parents of Goldberg Polin, who've been actively campaigning for the release of their son, told him to stay strong.
And Hirsch, if you can hear this, we heard your voice today for the first time in 201 days. And if you can hear us, I am telling you, we are telling you, we love you, stay strong, survive.
His parents also made a plea to the negotiating parties to get a deal done and end the suffering. Meanwhile, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan called for the immediate release of the hostage.
All I can say is this is an innocent young man being held hostage by a terrorist organization, and he should be released immediately without condition and without delay.
According to Reuters, Goldberg Polin is among the 133 hostages still held in Gaza, after more than 100 were released last year. Israel has been launching assaults on Gaza in an attempt to rescue them. More than 34,000 Palestinians have been killed since the start of the conflict, according to Gaza's health ministry. The United Nations is particularly concerned about the number of children killed. The UN Commissioner for Human Rights says a child is being killed or wounded every 10 minutes. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the leaders of South Korea and Japan should jointly receive the Nobel Peace Prize for their efforts towards peace. Now, this is according to U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell while speaking with the Hudson Institute. He applauded the advances made by President Yoon Suk-yeol and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to move beyond diplomatic differences and towards a future-oriented path for regional stability and global prosperity. Noting that they were recently recognized for their courage with a joint award by the John F. Kennedy Foundation, Campbell said the Korean and Japanese leaders' efforts should be further celebrated. A forum here in Seoul back on Wednesday has highlighted the need for tangible steps toward carbon neutrality. The ReWorld Forum, hosted by non-profit SDX Foundation, brought together entities big and small and experts for talks on building partnerships to promote Korea's participation in the global campaign against carbon emission. Pundits say the forum comes amid concerns that Korea's efforts to harness renewable energy to reach global goals may fall short of its advanced partners. In the world of K-pop, infighting between parent company HYBE and the CEO of its subsidiary ADOR, which manages girl group NewJeans, is looking to become quite ugly amid accusations of a takeover and rampant plagiarism. Our Hee-jin explains.
On Thursday, South Korea's largest K-pop agency, HYBE, said it will report the CEO of its subsidiary label ADOR, Min Hee-jin, to the police for breach of trust. In a press release on Thursday morning, the entertainment agency said that specific evidence had been gathered to support their claims that Min had made moves to seize control of the label. This latest action is based on an interim report of an audit initiated on Monday. The conflict sparked on Monday when Min accused another HYBE subsidiary, Belift Lab, of plagiarism due to creative similarities between recently debuted girl group Islet and ADOR's girl group NewJeans. But HYBE said Min's attempt to take over ADOR was planned before Islet's debut, saying it detected attempts from Min and a close executive associate on October 22nd last year. HYBE revealed it has at least 3 digital documents to support their suspicion, including paperwork related to terms for contract changes and plans for attracting external investors. The documents gave HYBE grounds to suspect Min was working on a plan to push HYBE to sell its 80% stake in ADOR or to take NewJeans to form a separate company. According to a source close to Min, the documents were merely personal notes. The audit is ongoing, and if the truth behind the accusations remain unresolved, the case could escalate to a legal battle. As for what lies ahead for NewJeans, one expert said the group already have a well-established concept and color that would not be affected by Min's absence. Industry analysts have also said that the legal noise is expected to have minimal impact on NewJeans' activities, including the release of a new single next month. HYBE has also said that it will continue to care for NewJeans members. Hee-jin, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. We begin today in the United States and protests against the war in Gaza that have spread across university campuses nationwide. Tensions remained high at Columbia University, where U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson held a press conference alongside Republican lawmakers on Wednesday. Johnson said the university had failed to protect Jewish students amid concerns over anti-Semitism and was heckled by students as he told them to go back to class and stop the nonsense. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also weighed in on the same day, saying that anti-Semitism had taken over leading universities. Protests against Israel's war in Gaza have gained momentum at U.S. universities since police clashed with demonstrators at Columbia last week. By Wednesday, they had spread to campuses including Harvard University, MIT, and the University of California, Berkeley, while scuffles with police or arrests were reported at the University of Texas, Austin, Ohio State University, and the University of Southern California. Activists are calling on universities to cut ties with companies with links to Israel's war in Gaza. In Spain, the country's Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez has announced that he will make a decision on his future by Monday after the court opened an inquiry on corruption claims against his wife. In a statement on Wednesday, the Spanish leader said he would suspend his public duties until next week and that he needs time to decide whether he should continue to lead the government or renounce this honor. A Spanish court said earlier on Wednesday that a preliminary investigation will be launched on Sanchez's wife, Begoña Gómez, to test the claims of corruption against her made by anti-graft campaign group Manos Limpias, or Clean Hands. The group claimed that the 49-year-old Begoña Gómez has used her position as the wife of the Prime Minister to influence business deals. One of the most popular tourist destinations in Italy, the canal city of Venice, will start charging an entrance fee for day trippers from this weekend. The fee of €5, or about $5.40, will be charged to visitors who are traveling only for the day to the Old City, Venice's historical center. Those traveling directly to minor islands, like Burano and Murano, will be exempt from the charge, along with people staying in the city for 1 or more nights, or those who have a second home in Venice. Locals and commuters will also be exempt. The pilot day tripper fee will be charged to visitors on peak dates, mainly weekends, from April 25th to July 14th. A previously lost piece of artwork by Austrian painter Gustav Klimt has been sold for some $32 million at an auction in Austria on Wednesday. The portrait of Fräulein Lisa was thought to have been long lost until it was found in a private villa near Vienna. It had been hanging there for decades before auction house Im Kinski put it on display in January. The piece was one of the last works Klimt began a year before he died in 1918. The painting was sold to an anonymous bidder from Hong Kong. Kim Xiang, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. We've had cloudy and breezy starts all through the week so far, but we should have the most pleasant afternoon of the week under brighter skies with much warmer afternoon temperatures. And especially those in East Coast regions will notice highs jumping 10 to 12 degrees higher today after mid-teen daily highs. Now the concern is regarding air dust. Well, most places will have decent air quality, but eastern parts of the country could have bad dust levels during the day today, so please have a face mask handy. Now back to today's temperatures. Highs are 2 to 10 degrees higher than yesterday across Korea. And Seoul sees a high of 22 degrees Celsius. Daegu, Gyeongju topping out at 27 degrees. Cloudy skies become much sunnier this afternoon. The warming trend that begins this afternoon should continue through Sunday under plenty of sunshine. Meanwhile, Jeju Island should see frequent rainfall. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, that brings us to the end of our Thursday afternoon newscast. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, so do stay with us and thank you for now.
She was the only one on the video. It's the video that he took. So just to blame among the young people, he betrayed her. So if I was her, I will never forgive him.
근데 진짜 너네 가만 안 둬? 어?
늙어서 사진도 안 찍는구만. 하지 마.
한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Korea's law on animal protection was framed out in 1991, and for the first time in over 30 years, the law was revised in 2022 with the Enhanced Animal Protection Act put into effect starting April 27, 2023. So what are the details of the revised act? What changes have advocates witnessed amid the presence of this revised act? And how do Korea's efforts to protect animal rights compare to those of its global partners? Welcome to Issues and Insiders for this Thursday, April 25th here in Korea. I'm Min Hee-jin. Today we address efforts to ensure animal protection under the revised Animal Protection Act, which went into effect on April 27th last year. For this, I have Professor Cho Hee-kyung at Hongik University live on the line. Professor Cho, it's lovely to have you back.
Thank you for inviting me.
I also have Shin-ju Eun with us, joining us virtually from the Korea Animal Rights Advocates. Chun, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Right, Professor Cho, let's begin with some details then about Korea's revised Animal Protection Act.
Certainly, as you mentioned, this act has been completely overhauled, actually. The first time it's been essentially overhauled like this in 31 years. And it has introduced a number of important changes to the existing act. I think, in my opinion, most important of which is the changed definition of what constitutes an animal abuse. In the past, the definition of abuse of an animal focused very much on physical abuse of animals, so causing death, injury, pain, or abandoning an animal used to be defined as an abuse. But now it also includes omissions, so essentially neglecting animals, not giving it proper care, that would also constitute abuse. So it's now possible to take action with regard to owners who are not actively abusive towards animals, but who are simply neglecting their animals and not giving proper care. That's a really important change. It also made it compulsory to get permit or license for those who trade in animals, so that it's no longer enough just to simply register and report their business. They have also increased the penalties for infringement of the duties under the law, so that they have, for example, doubled the penalty that applies to abusing an animal from 1 year's imprisonment to 2 years, and the fine amount has also doubled as well. They've also strengthened oversight with regard to laboratory experiments of animals, and also that they have introduced change to allow local authorities to essentially take over the care of animals from owners who are not looking after them properly. So they have really increased the scope and the strength of protection given to animals, which I think reflects the changing attitude of our society towards animals.
Right, indeed. And these comprehensive changes, June, took effect last year. And this coming Saturday, that would be April 27th, we mark the first anniversary of the Act's implementation. What changes has your group witnessed amid the presence of this new revised Act, would you say, June?
Yeah. I think government regulations on animal-related businesses have been strengthened, and issues that have been in blind spots, such as licensing for breeding vicious dogs, temperament testing and evaluation, and also private animal shelters have come within the legal framework. But however, so-called possession ban, which restricts future ownership or possession of animals by those convicted of animal cruelty, was not legislated. Social awareness of animal protection and welfare has increased, but unfortunately, laws have not yet caught up.
Right, so that is one place where perhaps we can look forward to some more improvements then. In the meantime, Professor Joe, earlier this month, a man in his 60s was caught on camera assaulting a goose at Konkuk University. It was a disturbing clip of animal cruelty. What legal consequences would you say does he look to face?
Yes, you're right. It was quite shocking. I mean, the man just approached the goose and started beating its head and almost smashing it onto the ground. So that would definitely constitute abuse of the animal. And under the revised act, the man can be prosecuted, and if found guilty, can be liable for up to 2 years imprisonment or 20 million won in fine. But if you look at precedents of similar cases of animal abuse, I fear that he may get off with just a small fine. The fine amount has increased recently, so it used to be some, hundreds or 200,000 won, etc. Now it's in the millions, not just in hundreds of thousands of won, which sounds a lot, but it's really like, anything less than $1 million won is less than $1,000. But the courts are reluctant to impose very stiff penalties for animal abuse. And so I would guess that in this case, he might be liable for up to perhaps maybe 3 million won in fine, if that.
Right, and keeping this case in mind also, June, the reports of animal abuse itself, these reports themselves have actually been on the rise over the past few years. But there have been very few cases, I understand, of punishment. What more can you tell us?
Among violations of the Animal Protection Act, those who cruelly abuse or kill animals are subject to criminal punishment. There is a statistics. As of 2022, 0.1% of the defendants arrested and indicted for violating the Animal Protection Act were handed over to formal trials. And 5.5% of the defendants were sentenced to prison, and 59.6% were sentenced to fines over the past 5 years. So I think the court still doesn't seem to take animal crimes seriously.
Right. And Professor Cho, what can you tell us about how Korea's efforts to crack down or to enhance animal protection, how does that compare to the efforts made by its partners elsewhere?
So what June said is absolutely correct. Our courts still don't really take abuse of animals that seriously. In fact, there was a case where the judge objected to lawyers representing the owner of animals that were victimized as, the animals died, and the judge said the animals' death shouldn't be called death, but demise, because these are things or objects under civil code. And so this is still the attitude of some of the judges on our courts. So another case example is there was a case a few years ago where a man threw a dog that belonged to his neighbor from the roof of a building. He was given, I think it was 2 million won in fine, whereas a similar case that happened in the US, a dog was thrown off the roof of a building, and the offender was sentenced to 2 years in prison. So now we do have these penalties on the books. It's in legislation. They actually amended the law to allow courts to give stiffer penalties to the offenders. But as June noted, the conviction rate is very low. And even when convicted, imprisonment is very rare, and the penalties are still lower, which means that recidivism, so offenders who abuse animals continue offending them, and we don't have the provision to prohibit those people from being able to own animals again. In other countries, for example, they would be prohibited from owning another animal for at least some period, maybe 5 to 10 years, or forever in cases of severe abuses. And we really should have adopted such provisions in our law as well.
Right. June, as Professor Cho mentioned, animal advocates also, they've denounced the act of regarding animals as objects. Would you like to take this opportunity today to perhaps share your thoughts on this particular matter?
Animals are sentient beings and have their own unique habits. However, due to its legal status here in South Korea as an object, problems arise such as weak punishment, as the professor mentioned, for animal abuse crimes, and insufficient compensation for animal damages. Also, due to the limitation of animals being treated as objects, it is difficult to properly rescue the animals in danger if the animal abuser does not give up ownership. So to protect the lives of animals, it is, I believe, essential to improve their legal status. And as you know, Austria, Germany, Switzerland, etc., have already stipulated in law that animals are non-objects.
Right. And Professor Jo, in the meantime, do you suppose more can be done perhaps during the process of case investigation to allow for appropriate legal consequences to those who abuse animals?
Yes, certainly. Parallels can be actually drawn to laws relating to stalking. We amended stalking laws to protect better the victims of stalking. And here we have strengthened the law to protect animals better, but courts' attitude needs to change, and also police agencies and investigation needs to change to provide better protection. So, in fact, the police agency has actually revised its investigation manual regarding animal abuse back in 2021 because the existing manual was very thin on actual details of how to proceed and investigate animal abuse cases. It was mostly about explanation of existing law. So in 2021, they actually went through a great deal of effort and produced this a tome of an investigation manual which provides great detail and proper procedures on how to gather evidence, information, etc., etc. But the problem is, in reality, they don't have the resources to be able to carry out these proper steps. For example, if there is an autopsy needed of the dead animal, they can't do it because they don't have the means to carry them out. If there is forensic evidence that needs to be carried out, that they still can't do it because they don't have the necessary personnel or resources. So it's well and good to have these manuals in place, but unless they have the resources, funding, and personnel to put them into practice, it's really not much use. So I hope that keeping up with the changes in law, the government agencies will be able to budget and provide better resources to be able to carry out better investigation. Because otherwise, even if offence continue to take place, there won't be any evidence to be able to prosecute them successfully.
Right, indeed. And as Professor Cho mentioned earlier, Chun, these repeated offences are really common as abusers of animals are able to easily access new pets should he or she wish to, I hear. What do you suggest then, Chun, to prevent this very disturbing reality?
Oh, yes. I mentioned above, the possession ban is an alternative to protect animals. Anyone who has been criminally punished for animal cruelty must keep a record, and a system is also needed to check his or her record when he or she adopts an animal. However, in a situation where a significant amount of transactions are taking place between individuals, there is no way for individuals to check whether the person is about to adopt an animal has a criminal record. So I think we need to think about how to fill these blind spots.
Chun, this is an impromptu question. Given the concerns we've touched upon today, do you suppose that potential owners of furry friends need to perhaps take on a course on perhaps responsibilities that need to be acquired by potential pet owners? Do we need to have such courses, do you think? Or am I going too far?
Yes, but I think it's not easy. So the government, also just the civil sections like us, have to think about whether it be right way or realistic way.
Right. And Professor, just speaking from perhaps as a scholar in the field of law, what are the chances perhaps of putting in a legal requirement where you have a potential owner required to take a particular course on pet responsibility before being able to adopt a pet?
I think it's actually not that far-fetched. We've been talking about how under our civil code, animals are still categorized as objects. And that's a legacy of the continental legal system, which we have inherited originating from Germany. And Germany, Austria, Switzerland, all of those civil code countries have amended their own civil code so that animals are no longer categorized as objects. Also, those countries actually require owners of companion animals to pay taxes And they also require owners to take training and to show that they can make their animals obey them. And so if you go to adopt an animal, and in fact, one other thing is to actually ban sale of animals on high streets, like something that you can just simply go into a shop and pick up, like a handbag or something. And those kind of changes can certainly be implemented by change of law. And given the changing attitude in our society, I think, give us a little bit more time and we might actually see those changes happening in our society as well.
Right, I'll keep my fingers crossed for that. Meanwhile, Professor Jo, owners of fierce dogs here in Korea, I believe, will soon be required to seek permission to keep their pets after signing up for a liability insurance program and having their pets spayed or neutered. How do you respond to this policy?
Right. So this change was actually part of the new amendments to the Animal Protection Act. Some of the changes came into effect last year, and some will actually come into effect 2 days later, on 27th of April this year. And this new licensing scheme for aggressive dog breeds is one of these new changes. And personally, I actually have some concerns about this because they have designated 5 breeds of dogs as aggressive breeds, and you require specific license. And these include Pit Bull Terrier, I think Staffordshire Terrier, and also one other quite common type of terrier. And the thing is, there's an American agency which tests like the aggressiveness of and temperament of dogs, and they have classified Dachshund and miniature poodles as 2 of the most aggressive breeds in dogs. But these are not categorized as having a requirement of license. And it really depends on individual dogs, because I have seen some of, I have met some of the most friendly Pit Bull Terriers, and I have also met very, very aggressive poodles as well. So it really depends on how the owners train their dogs, how well the dogs listen to their owners. Of course, it's a different thing if these dog breeds are specifically, they are specifically bred for aggression, and they are usually used in dog fights, etc. But if they're kept for companionship, then they are not usually used for that kind of purpose. And to specifically, single out these particular breeds and say, well, these require specific licenses and there is limitation, you have to take out specific insurance, etc. I think that's almost like a discrimination, and you really should have a general requirement of education and training of all owners and all dogs.
Right, and in keeping that discrimination in mind, that is perhaps why debate over animal rights remains very fierce here in Korea. That being said, how should we, Chun, seek to better approach this ongoing debate?
I think we have to admit that animals are also members of our society. And like I said before, scientists are also accepting animals as sentient beings. And now there is I think, a need to break away from modern practices like, animal use, overuse, or exploitation. Additionally, as there are many different animal species, in zoos or in wildlife, it is necessary to better understand their habits and make human efforts for their welfare rather than simple protection, I think.
Right, and perhaps start on a broader social discussion on the matter as well then. Chun, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. And Professor Cho, as always, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, well, that ends Thursday's edition of Issues and Insiders. We return same time tomorrow, so do join us then.
엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?